Welcome back to another episode of the Parent Network podcast. I am your host, Ashley Aites, and we are wrapping up season one, y'all. Y'all have rolled with me in this first season, this embryonic stage of this podcast, and I am forever grateful for every share, for every download, for every like, for every subscription to the podcast across all platforms. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I am excited to continue to grow this podcast and interview and converse around various topics that are just important, not just to parenthood, but just to us as women and as men. So, on today's episode, our last episode of the season, I want to kind of just talk a little bit about what it is like when your child is grieving the death of their loved one. I haven't had this conversation, publicly um, at all. I've had it a little bit privately with a few friends and, of course, with my children, and specifically my youngest son who lost his grandfather unexpectedly. And as I've shared with you all before, he's very, very empathetic and he can sense emotions from others very, very strongly. And so sometimes what he's feeling may not even be from him. It may be, something that he's picking up from his brother, his dad, or someone around him. But when he is feeling his own emotions, sometimes they can be very intense. And so we have had conversations consecutively since the passing of his grandfather, which was about a little over a year ago, just about what it looks like to grieve and the grieving process. And I believe that it's so important to share this with your children. So that way, when life happens, because life happens even in childhood, that they're not caught off guard. They're not what's the word? They're not suppressing their feelings because they don't understand what this feeling is. And so today we're just going to talk just a little bit about grief, and what that looks like and how it can show up with children. Now, I do want to preface it by saying that grief is not only relegated to death of someone that is close to us, but it could be, the loss of a friend, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job. As adults, we know that there are types of grief that we can be prepared for, and then there are types of grief that just hit us out the blue. And it can hit us in ways that we don't feel we're experienced in or that we've expected. And so as we learn, we can teach. And sometimes that teaching happens in the moment. And I want to just share that grief also is not a bad thing. It is so important that we learn how to grieve. Now, I do know that sometimes people can stay in prolonged grief and sorrow, and that agony of the pain of whatever happened can sometimes feel overbearing and like it is going to overtake you. And so it is my hope that what we share today can kind of give you some reprieve from your grief if you are grieving or have been in prolonged grief, that you are going to get to the other side. Joy is going to come as you mourn. I think it's so important that we do mourn so that we can receive joy. And so I'll just get right into it, y'all. So as I said, my youngest son, he experienced the death of his grandfather, and he didn't really understand how to take it. There were a lot of questions that he had surrounding what happened, why did it happen, all of the things. And to the best of my ability and to the best of his dad's ability, he explained those things to him. But when the parent is experiencing this grief, this loss, this shock, sometimes we neglect how to walk with our children through it. And so there will be moments, in days and times where my son, he'll get sad. And so I'll ask him, what's going on? How are you feeling? What are you feeling? And, for the most part, he'll say, I feel okay, or I'm angry. That was one of the biggest, most frequent words that he would say, is that he was angry, that he didn't understand why this had to happen to his grandfather. He didn't understand why people have to be evil and cruel and all of these things. And it opened up conversation to the way of the world, to the way that humanity is, because we don't get to choose why people do what they do. We don't get to choose any of those things. The only thing that we're able to control is ourselves. And so when things initially were fresh with him, he cried. He cried a lot. He would go to school. He would be sad. He would tell his teachers. He would tell the counselors. And of course, by law, they would have to call me because he was divulging information that was private to him and that needed to be expressed to me, that, this is something that he's talking about. And so I asked him, I said, do you think that you need to talk to someone else? Because although you know that you can talk to me, I don't want you to feel like I'm the only space that can be safe for you. And so he was like, no, because again, he had the counselor at his school that he wanted to talk to. Now, I am going to get both of my sons their own therapists. I think it's important, not because there's anything wrong or there can be something wrong. But again, when we talked about breaking cycles, one of the things that I'm debunking in the way that I'm raising my children is that therapy is for people who have mental illness. It's not. Therapy is preventative, or therapy can be on the back end. It doesn't matter. Whatever your reason for going to therapy is, let that be your reason. And the desire is for you to get what you need. And so my children have experienced things in their lives that I feel they can definitely benefit from therapy. I don't want to psychoanalyze my children. I don't want to play all of these roles in their lives when I don't have to. So I hope that frees a parent today, number one, to say, you know what, let me get some therapy for my kid. It's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean anything other than you want them to have an abundance of safe spaces that can help them navigate life's pivots, life's transitions, and life's blows. Okay. So they will be getting their own therapist before the end of this year is out. So back to this grieving that my youngest son is experiencing. So one day he says to me, I'm going to uh, do what happened to my grandfather, to the person who did it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you're feeling. And he was experiencing that deep grief, that anger, that frustration, that hurt. Because under anger, it's just hurt. You're hurt. You're hurt at the fact that you'll never be able to talk to this person again. You'll never be able to see this person again. And for a child at 9 years old, and I can speak to this from my own experience of being 9 and burying my grandmother, but also walking with her through the stages of death, it's no walk in the park. It's no it's nothing that anyone can prepare you for, especially at 9 years old. And one of the things that I vowed was I would never parentify my children before they stepped into their own roles of desiring to be a parent. Now, there are some things that we cannot escape. Life happens, things happens. And so with him experiencing grief at 9 in the way that he is experiencing it, we couldn't prepare him for this. But what we can do is walk with him through this. And so every time he has his moments, I allow him to feel his moments. If you desire that you need to cry, cry. because crying does not make you weak. Crying is cleansing, it's healing your soul, it's healing the broken pieces in you that you feel that can only be put back together by the presence of this person. And that's untrue, but you're allowed to feel what you feel. And because we are a household of faith, I do give them scriptures. I talked about the emotion box that I have. And so I let him pull out, an emotion from there. And we talk about what he's feeling in that moment, and then giving him scripture to help him understand that even though you're feeling this in this moment, you're not going to feel this way forever. But I do want you to acknowledge how you're feeling and how this has affected you. And so now that we are a little over a year into his grieving process, because again, grieving is a process. You don't know when it's going to hit you, you don't know how intense it's going to hit you, but it will hit you. And when it does, be with it. Be with it in that moment, because it's totally okay. And so, as we are, like I said, a little over a year into his process of grieving, he has gotten better, but there are still very many moments where he's talking about, that he misses his grandfather. And all of that is natural, y'all. As adults, we miss people who transition from this life to death. We miss people who are still in this life, but we have transitioned out of the depths of the intimacy of the relationship, and it's no longer there. To miss someone is not a crime. And that is one of the things that I wanted to make sure that he understands. To miss your grandfather, it's not a crime. You don't have to suppress the fact that you miss him. You don't have to get over the fact that you miss him. I know people, my own grandmother, she's been gone, oh man, over 20 years. And there's still days where I think about her where it's like, I wonder, if she will be proud of what I'm doing right now. Because in the first episode, I talked about the relationship that she and I had, where it was like, I don't really know if she even likes me, but I know that she loved me. And so navigating grief with children, giving them language for how they're feeling, I personally believe helps them to understand grief a little bit better. Like I said, as we learn it, we teach it, because I don't believe there is one person that is ever going to have a grip on grief. Like this is the roadmap to grief, because there honestly is no roadmap to grief. It happens, it comes, and you literally have to feel it. You have to sit in that thing, and then you need to come out of it. Again, understanding that as you mourn, joy is going to come. And the way joy comes is we think on those memories with this individual that brought us happiness, that brought us excitement, that brought us peace. That is how I believe joy comes. Yes, they're not physically here, but you have memories of their life. You have trinkets, possibly, from them. You have words of wisdom, whatever it is that you have, you can hold on to that and you can remember that. And I can guarantee you that it will bring a smile to your face. And I teach that to my son, to both of them. We don't get to choose when we die. We don't get to choose what it looks like, even in life. We don't get to choose sometimes how people see us. That's not our business. What we can control is ourselves. And as long as we're showing up true to who we know that we are, and continuing to heal, continuing to evolve, and continuing to become, that's it. We don't need to worry about how people are going to perceive us. And so I want to now even just kind of transition the conversation of grief, of death, to like grieving the loss of a friendship. Because I don't know about y'all parents, But there have been times where I thought that certain people were going to be around forever. Like, we're hooked in, we're locked in. They say if we locked in, ain't no switching up. No, the switch up happens. The switch up definitely can happen because people grow and people change. And one of the things that I'm learning is we cannot fault people for growing and changing in the direction that they desire to go. Again, we have no control over what people do. The only control we have is over self. And once we allow ourselves to settle into, I'm controlling me, I'm changing the narrative for me and no one else, then you see evolution happening. And so I have transitioned into many different types of friendships, many different types of relationships. And some of it was sad. Some of it was like, dang, I thought we were really going to be rocking, for the rest of our lives. Some of it was, I could see this coming. I could see this coming. I knew this was going to happen. And because I knew this was going to happen, okay, it sucks, but it is what it is. Then there are some that literally caught me off guard. Like, wait, we were just cool. Now we no longer have a relationship. Adulting relationships is a whole nother breed of relationships. However, what I am learning is the depth of my healing, the depth of my growth is going to produce the depth of the relationships that I have. So if I'm surface, if I don't want to dig, if I shy away from this journey, that's what I'm going to receive in relational spaces. And it's so important that in these relational spaces with yourself first, that you assess how you are as a person. Are you a trash friend? Are you a trash person? Are you a trash mother? Are you a trash wife? And when I say trash, y'all, I mean, can you be better? Are you stuck in your ways? Are you convinced that people are out to get you and it has nothing to do with you? That's what I mean by trash, because that mentality is gutter mentality. It is low level thinking. It is a fixed mindset, and it's not going to produce anything that is going to be fruitful or prosperous. And so when you transition your life, when you transition into different arenas of life, you would expect or hope that people that you have been with are going to be rocking with you. Now, there are some people that are going to be with you for the rest of your life, or for a very significant portion of your life. And that's amazing. Those friendships that have withstood the test of times, that have rocked with the pivots, that have seen you emerge from that caterpillar to butterfly situation, those are cherished, seasoned friendships. And I love those. And then there are some times where in our adult life, we're going to meet people that are going to fit what we need for the season. And we have to be okay with that too. Because when that season is over, you may have to grieve that loss. Like, dang, this was good. This was exactly what I needed. I wish I could just have it. And I think sometimes what we have to realize is the lesson that we learned. What did we grow from in that season with that person? How did they come and impact our lives for the better? Because even if something is taken away from us, let's say time, someone wastes your time in a relationship and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did all of this. I can't believe I wasted time, X, Y, and Z. But what did you learn? How did you grow? How did you realize that, oh, this is a waste of time? Every relationship teaches us something. Every relationship, whether it produced the desired outcome that we wanted or it did not, it still taught you something. And we have to be okay with pivoting. I posted something on my social media not too long ago about being okay with the pivot, learning how to be unmovable and unshakable when pivots happen, when transitions happen, when grief comes knocking at our door. We don't always know when it's going to happen. And I used to be a person that I needed to know everything. I needed to know everything. If I didn't know it, then that was a problem. But as I've started to mature more, it's like some things you don't need to know. Leave it up to the element of surprise. Because if you literally knew everything, would you walk through some of the doors, some of the storms that you had to walk through to even receive some of the things that you're receiving? And that's a real question that we have to sit with. And sometimes that answer is no. We would try to take all types of shortcuts, back roads, all of the things to get what we want. And so, processes in life, grief in life, transitions in life are all to teach us something. And it's up to us to learn that lesson. I love being in relationships, but when the relationship is over, when and if it comes to an end, it doesn't mean that I have to degrade or downplay, what I received or what I even gave from that relationship. It's just one of those things where it didn't work out. And this isn't just about romantic relationships. This is in friendships. Sometimes those friendship circles end and we have to grieve it. Again, y'all, we're kind of just, we're talking about grief here and the elements that comes with grief, because there are different ways, different stages that it's going to happen. And it's okay. It's okay. That's that piece of vulnerability that we have to become awakened to, that says, yeah, it's okay that I'm not okay right now. It's okay that I miss my friend. It's okay that this is happening. It's okay that I miss this individual. It's okay that I'm mad that they died. It's okay. But I'm not going to sit in that forever. But I am going to acknowledge that this is what I'm feeling. So, y'all, as we are parenting, as we are living life, as we continue to learn more about things that we know our children are inevitably going to experience, let's do our due diligence to teach it to them. And if we don't know it, let's walk with them through it. Let's learn it together. I can't tell y'all how many times I'm learning new things with my children because they're of a different generation. And the way in which they do things is not the way that I do things all the time. And I have to be okay with allowing them to explore the way in which they're doing things and not always desire to put my hand in it and say, no, you need to do it this way. Because I feel like that takes away from their dependency. Now, while they are under my care and my supervision, I do desire that we develop an interdependent relationship, not a codependent relationship and not an independent relationship, but an interdependent relationship where they're dependent on me and I'm dependent on them. Because as y'all know, I live by the saying that parenthood is one of the most beautiful, messy relationships that you will have. And so, as we are navigating different lanes in this journey of parent child relationship, there's an interdependency that I want to happen. And I vocalize that, um, expectations, desires, they're big. We all have them. Our children have expectations and desires of us. We have expectations and desires of them. And when they're not met, we can't go to the blame game. We can sit down and assess, okay, well, what happened here? What happened? What happened? I think, and y'all are going to continue to hear me say this, that communication is the bedrock of every relationship, and it does not change in parenting, it intensifies. The more you communicate, in my book, the better you have clarity and understanding. So if you don't understand something, you ask a question. My children do not like when I'm always asking them, okay, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I do try to scale it back sometimes because I understand, listen, they need time to process. Their brain is not your brain. And we have to realize that as parents too. The way our brain is wired and developed and the way we rationalize and see things is not the way that our children are going to rationalize and see everything. And we have to leave space for that. That developmental gap is there. And that's where grace comes in. So, as we navigate various lanes, specifically one of those being grief, parents, allow your children to have the moments that they need. Allow yourself to have the moment that you need to grieve. Allow them to see you grieving. It's a blueprint for them. And we may not always do it in a healthy way because sometimes we revert to our coping mechanisms, and that can be scary. That can be scary for us when we revert back to coping mechanisms because we've learned to deal with certain things in a certain way. But it's my hope that throughout this season one, that you all were able to hear something that is life changing for you, that you'll take and that you'll implement, that you will write it down and say, let me look more into this. If you need to get therapy or counseling, that you look into that. There's so many affordable ways now that they are launching for mental health services because it's important, y'all. Mental, emotional health is going to yield the financial health sometimes that you're looking for. Because there's a scripture that says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, but to lose his soul? What does it profit you? If you have everything that you need, but deep down inside, you are in anguish, you're in torment, you're in turmoil, you are oppressed, you are depressed, you are in a heavy state of just sorrow, it won't really profit us anything. And so we have to look into our soul. We have to look into what's going on with us. Sometimes some of us may need to get soul sessions. My pastor mom, she does soul sessions, and I remember when I was going through those with her, it was literally like somebody was looking into the depths of the abyss of me. Okay. That is the best way that I could explain it. But it pulled out of me things that I didn't even know was there. And so it's so important that as parents, we are examples for our children. And there's no perfect parenting, y'all. Let's just remember that. There is no perfect parenting style. There is no perfect parenting strategy. We have a desire. Again, I talked about that when we talked about parenting plans. We have a desire of what we want it to look like. But when lives and things happen and situations hit us, how are we pivoting? How are we handling these life moments with our children? And so I wanted to kind of share that with you all today about, my son and his grieving process, and then, paralleling that with how we grieve as adults with losing relationships, losing people. It's a part of life, but it's the way in which we handle it that's going to help us to start to move into joy. So that is today's episode, y'all. Like I said, season one has come to an end, but season two is going to come back with some amazing, amazing conversations with some amazing women in various roles of motherhood. And I can't wait to get that out to you all. But until then, enjoy the episodes of season one. Think about, how you grieve. Think about, transitions that you've experienced. Think about your own journey of parenting. Think about, days, times, months where you've neglected yourself and how you are going to truly implement self-care, soul care As much as you prosper from your soul is how you're going to prosper holistically. And I am about holistic prosperity, not just money. Wealth is not about money. Wealth is in health of mind, body, spirit. And we are all of those things. God has given us a body that we must physically take care of. So get up and move. If you haven't been moving, get up and move, get active. Figure out something that you like to do. Get back to you, mom, dad, get back to you. Let your children see you doing what you love to do. That will inspire them, that will give them courage. I love y'all to life. Until next time.